streaming.
Thanks very much. You ready with audio?
I am.
Yep, we're good.
Okay, well, thanks for coming today. Just want to make an announcement. You've all been following the recent acceleration of cases in Clinton County. We've been observing that the cases are obviously on a really swift upward trend, so we're confident that things are probably going to get worse before they get better, and as a consequence, we've decided to put in place again the plan that we developed back in March 12th and put in place in March 16th for closing of City Hall to visitors. They'll still, of course, be able to come, either make an appointment or make a telephone call from the front door and have somebody come and get them and be brought to a room where they can safely conduct their business with the city, but we're going to encourage as best we can for them to use all the various electronic means we've developed in this COVID era to take care of the various needs like online bill pay, completion of forms for applications for licenses and permits, etc. So that will be put in place as of tomorrow at 8 a.m. We've been working with departments to have this as seamless as possible. We do encourage people to call in advance, but there will be somebody staffing the doors 8 hours a day, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. each day that the City Hall is open Monday through Friday. But we do really encourage people to use electronic means as best they can to do their business with City Hall in an effort to prevent the further spread within city residents and to also keep our staff safe for that matter too. We've expanded the protocol in conjunction with working with Clinton County Health Department to have minimum of 10 feet separation and mandatory mask wearing at all times in our buildings. So people have repositioned their offices to allow for 10-foot separation. Those who feel that they have additional health concerns, we're creating isolated spaces for them to work as well. So we're doing everything we can, knowing that we're probably in for a tough slog through the holiday season. The only hard thing we have to figure out yet is when this will be over. As you know, we don't have individual data just for the city. We know the city's trending exactly where the county is, and probably, I would guess, makes up for the large bulk of cases within the county, or at least probably more than a representative share of them. So we know the county has been pushing into that red zone category of 100 per 100,000 population per week recently, so we believe strongly the city's definitely in that. The question is, when does the city come out of that? And if we don't have the data of what's actually happening in the city, it's going to be kind of hard to figure out when we've reached the other side of this mountain that we're obviously in this city, in this county, in this state, and in this country heading up very rapidly. If there's anything else that we can do to protect our employees and protect the city residents, we'll do that. I would encourage other city entities and agencies to follow similar practices if they possibly can. Figure out ways to work smarter to conduct the necessary business, but still at the same time keeping people safe. And obviously the most important thing always is wearing a mask. Made a difference for us ever since April 2nd. We've actually got many more cases on a daily basis on average now than we did back in March 12th and April 2nd when we put these various procedures in place. So let's hope that we can have as much success in avoiding that steep peak, steep mountain climb we saw earlier in the year by doing this now nice and early. Other communities have done this. I think Burlington, or pardon me, South Burlington has taken an additional step. I don't know of other locations in New York State yet, but as you know, if you've been following the data, the experience of Burlington and Plattsburgh have been pretty much identical in per capita incidences of infections. As a matter of fact, I think Vermont restricted travel to New York before New York restricted travel to Vermont, so, or Clinton County more specifically. So clearly other people are thinking about this as well. You know that our various boards and agencies have already been working primarily on Zoom. Our Common Council hasn't. The Common Council has decided to convert to Zoom last Thursday, and they will come up with their own rules. I believe it's going to be, they're going to conduct Zoom meetings at the regular scheduled time. Of course, they're going to offer and moderate public participation in those meetings, just as they do for the zoning board and the planning board do. I think they're still working out what they want to do with actual in-person testifying. We're trying to figure out a way to accommodate that at this time, but certainly people will be able to access via Zoom. So we'll keep you posted as we hear more about that. I think that's it. I think this is the last time I'll probably end up visiting with you. It's been great. I hope it's the last time, only because if there is another time, it might mean we have another calamity to deal with. And you know, when I took this office, we were in a financial calamity, being dead broke and exhausted fund balance and $1 million deficits. And we're not dead broke this time, but it looks like we may be facing some deficits in the future. So I'm just grateful we've been able to build up a little bit of those reserves. And who could have imagined 2 crises over a matter of 4 years, much less one? But we'll get through this. We're a resilient community, and we've been well ahead of things like trying to get our finances in order, and then trying to stay ahead of COVID much more progressively than most other communities I've observed. Most communities, in my experience, they kind of wait for things to happen, then react to them rather than try to stay ahead of them. So I know our community, has been an honor to serve them, and they've really tried to stay ahead of everything, and I think we'll do that in this calamity as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions for you, but please keep safe. It's been a pleasure to know you.
Mayor, you mentioned that you're reinstating a lot of the protocols that were put in place back in March and April. Did you learn anything back then that have modified them for now, or are they pretty much the same?
You know, pretty much the same. As you recall, when we put those protocols in place was with an emergency order in March 12th, and put them in place on the following Monday. March 12th was a Thursday, I recall us all meeting down by on Durkee Street on that day. And so we had a lot of work to do to prepare for online delivery, etc. All those are in place now. We've now got online bill pay and automatic account deductions for your water and sewer and municipal bills. That I was the first one to sign up for that. It's great, and I never have to write a check again. That's the only check I used to write every month, and now that can all be done electronically. So we put a lot in place pretty quickly. Now, since then, we've had about 8 months of experience with them, so I trust they're working pretty smoothly. I know our staff is not going to be as busy under this regime as before. Of course, the last time we had almost nobody coming to any of our offices for about 3 months, if you recall. It'd be pretty rare to actually have somebody come and demand in-person service, and I know that because at that time, every call to City Hall was handled by Beth, who would run down and open up the door and bring them to the proper office, etc. And it was probably a handful in a day. There's probably some days that you didn't have any, that people really got used to that system. We hope they'll be as used to that system when we do this again. So we hope that this is going to be a very smooth rollout. Our Chamberlain tells me repeatedly that the most time-consuming part of delivering his services is the actual in-person one-on-one interactions, because they want to chat and check up and catch up since they were here last month, etc. He says electronic is, of course, instant because it's all processed automatically for automatic bill pay. And telephone service is actually very quick as well. So we're not furloughing anybody this time like we did before. So if we could keep up before with a number of people furloughed under that state incentive program that no longer really exists, then presumably we've got some spare time to really redouble our efforts and make sure that all of our services can really thoroughly be delivered online. So that's why I'm confident that we can do an even better job this time as we did before.
You also, at last Thursday's city council meeting, were talking to the councilors about, the various points in this that you wanted to, put into place. did you get any feedback from the counselors or from department heads after the meeting that created any revisions or changes in the directive moving forward?
No, the department has already knew in advance that this is what we were aiming for, and so I sent out an email to all of them saying, what would be your protocols? Please list with me your contact person, your various procedures. They each provided about a page on average of protocols for each of the 4 departments: community development, building inspector, city clerk, and finance office. And so they've been working on that ever since Wednesday, Thursday, and then on Thursday night I asked the council if this is something they wanted to pursue, and they had a straw vote, if you recall, that they did want to pursue this. Since then, no, there's been no change in their minds of how to proceed. And I think that, universally the departments have also agreed that this is probably the right time to do this.
Does the state mandate how long you can do this, or are there any sort of limitations?
I did not go the emergency order route this time as I did before, because this is something that only affects city property and city employees and city customers. So it didn't require an emergency order. However, I do recommend, as an order would, other entities should look at some of these practices as well, as we see this kind of acceleration going on. So no, this is not done through an emergency order like before. You may recall that emergency orders were liberally given out back in the March timeframe, but then by April or May, the state was very unwilling to issue emergency orders locally. If you recall, the last emergency order I effectively was able to issue was the mask wearing order on April 2nd. After that, they changed the regime and they wouldn't let me actually renew that order. Although ironically enough, about a week after they denied me renewing ours, they put theirs in place, which is the identical order for the entire state. So I wasn't at all confident that we could do anything more broadly, but then again, nor do I feel the need to do anything more broadly. This applies to keeping our staff and our visitors safe, and I can trust that employers can figure out their own protocols along the state guidelines as well. I wouldn't be surprised if the state decides to do more in the near future. As I said, our level of infection currently is quite a bit higher than what we were seeing back in March and April, when the state was very worried for us and imposed very strong conditions on every area in the state. And this situation is quite a bit worse and accelerating quite a bit more severely. So I wouldn't be surprised if the state at some point realizes they may need to strengthen or reinforce their protocols, but I think they're a little bit fearful of doing that given people's expectations right now.
And I think you also mentioned in that meeting that there's like a break around, I think was said around December 17th. Can you call the council back in if we have, more problems with COVID, if things start to peak even higher?
I don't know if there would be a reason to, because the city won't be able to do more than we're already doing. We're already going back to all of our protocols within the city, hardening our first responders, keeping our staff and our visitors safe. The next call is ultimately, in the absence of the governor allowing local jurisdictions to impose emergency orders, the next call is really with the state to figure out what to do next. So I would not anticipate any additional actions on the part of the city. We're already doing as much as we possibly could. And we're not going to close down all access to city services. People need to be able to pay their bills and open up accounts and obtain birth certificates and marriage licenses, etc. They just can't. Those are essential services. And if you recall, when the governor strengthened things in March and April following our lead, he often defined things based on essential services, but he defined just about everything a municipality provides as essential. You might not say that obtaining a birth certificate is essential, but if obtaining a birth certificate has something to do with perhaps getting a passport for some essential travel abroad, then even something as simple as a birth certificate could be essential. So we believe everything that we're doing here is in that category, and knowing we can't simply close down, we're trying to do everything we can to keep everybody as safe as we possibly can. Now, the governor did put in a lot of new rules that allow us to do a lot more stuff online. I believe that we can even do marriage licenses online, if I recall correctly. And there's ways to get documents notarized online, not online, but through online mechanisms. I know of local lawyers that are doing real estate closings essentially online, by having you stay in your car, do everything via Facebook, and then coming out at the last minute to notarize a document in person, etc. As we were doing back in March and April, we would have quite literally our notary go out to see somebody in the parking lot to notarize a document. So we're confident we can deliver all the essential services as we did before.
Now, obviously, you were saying that you're going back to the ways that we were in March. Obviously, City Hall will be closed, only 2 appointments only. Does that kind of expand to like other city departments, like the police, fire department? Are people not allowed in like any of those city kind of areas without an appointment?
People already aren't. They're all locked and secured areas. There's a common lobby at the police station. Then there's a glass screen to protect the residents from the staff and vice versa. So we've already got those protocols in place, and they're an ongoing protocol. So yes, this applies to all city departments. It's most relevant for the customer-oriented departments that tend to reside in this building, but all departments have gone to protocols. If we feel we have a hard time keeping our employees at that safe 10 feet distance in some shared workspaces elsewhere in the city, we're willing to move to shifts, etc., like we did before. So we only have half as many people on shift at a given time. That allows us to spread out our motor pools and our repair shops and that sort of thing. So all the various departments are prepared to go back to that protocol. You may recall we were splitting our DPW workers between various sites, like some would be down on Idaho and then others would be up at the Crate Center, etc. Police were doing the same thing. We'll do whatever's necessary to keep our staff safe.
So why do you think it's so important, obviously, to close down City Hall? Obviously, with our area seeing the spike in COVID-19 cases, why do you think it's so important now more than ever to kind of be in front of this and to close City Hall?
It's the bumblebee effect. We just need to figure out ways to reduce the number of face-to-face interactions for people on a given day. You recall me talking an awful lot a number of months ago about the RT, it's the rate of spread. You have to have a rate of spread below 1, which means if you are infected, on average, you're going to infect less than one other person. And if you can have an RT less than 1, then eventually the disease peters out. And so masks, if they're only, say 60%, 66% effective, that means you're going to infect 1/3 as many people. So if you had an RT of 2 without masks, now you're down to an RT of 0.67 with a mask, and that's what makes all the difference. So it's all trying to manage preventing person to person to person infections. And if we have 100 people coming into this building each day to do their business, that's 100 times more possible interactions than necessary. So all this is designed to reduce that RT. There's not a state in the country that has an RT less than 1 right now. At one time, the majority of states got back to less than 1. Some states are approaching RTs of 2, which is very high. That's exponential pandemic territories for RTs, and that's with a lot of states still all requiring a mask. So the next step is, if we're already wearing a mask and we still see that acceleration, which tells you that the RT must be greater than 1, the next thing we need to do is try to figure out a way to minimize that bumblebee effect. If we can play our part, and prevent 100 interactions from occurring here, which lead to another 100 interactions by those people going doing business somewhere else, etc., we can play our part in collapsing all this. And that's what I recommend everybody thinks about how to do what you need to do, but do it with less face-to-face contact.
Was this a hard decision for you?
No, it wasn't very hard in March or April either, because I knew it was the right decision. I think I've got quite a reputation for making big decisions that I believe are right, and take an awful lot of heat obviously for it, but that's just, I'm a policy kind of a person. I do my research, I follow things very closely, I try to have a good command for the data, and I make the decision without worrying about politics and who is going to upset, etc., but just what's the right decision in the long run for the community. And some would argue that doing things, first of all, we're not shutting anything down. We're just trying to reduce that human to human direct contact to slow down the disease. We're still delivering all our services. But I argued back in March and April, and you can see the evidence now, those communities around the world that have done the best job of really trying to put in place the policies early and often are the ones that are succeeding best in the wake of this pandemic. Canada's experienced, despite their colder climate, despite a lot more people indoors a lot earlier than the US, they're bad there, but they're not nearly as bad as the US. So I'm not afraid to make good public policy decisions, knowing that they're going to be sometimes unpopular. Heck, I'm as fed up as wearing a mask and not being able to travel and canceling vacation trips, and sometimes the huge expenses that you all probably have, as everybody. But I know that it's better for the economy in the long run for us to take the serious steps as need be, instead of waiting till things get really, really bad and then have everything come to a grinding halt, and at the same time have hundreds of thousands of deaths that I believe are unnecessary.
So this is all just because you want to try and help be ahead of this and try and slow that spread. Obviously, like you said, this is, all the same services are still going to be provided, but this is just going to limit the amount of people that are in here, the amount, like any potential spread of this virus.
Right, and if you think about the organizations in the city, first of all, let's acknowledge that the city is probably the entity where a lot of commerce occurs. I mean, we've got the hospital and the university, city hall, county buildings all here. We've got many of the banks are here. If you look at all these organizations, they're the places where people come to do their business face to face with other people. The hospital obviously has very strict protocols. The college has essentially shut down and sent all their students home already, as you know. The schools have shut down and sent all their students home for distance delivery. I don't know what the county is going to do next, but the city is one of those organizations which have a lot of face-to-face. I know the banks have developed protocols, but they've already for a long time had the mechanisms for online banking and ATMs and all that kind of stuff. So I've heard from the banks that their level of in-lobby traffic has absolutely plummeted, and that's exactly the right thing. Banking is still getting done, but it's getting done in a much safer way. So I hope that any agency that has that kind of face-to-face interaction considers how they can do as much as they can somehow online or through alternative delivery. But the biggest organizations with the most people coming in are the ones that have the greatest responsibility for doing it first.
And so like all the city services, those will be all online or over the phone?
We're not reducing our level of services in any way whatsoever. We're not reducing our staff in any way. Our staff will still be in the building doing the work, hopefully spending more time servicing and developing online protocols, but we're not curtailing any of our operations in any way.
What do you hope that by limiting traffic into the city hall, what do you hope that accomplishes?
I hope that other entities will follow. I hope that the county, if they haven't already done something along these lines, or at least discussing it, will do something similar. I know, like I say, the schools and the university and the hospital are all doing it. I hope that the rest homes and nursing facilities are doing it. I know the banks are taking this very seriously. I understand that banks are canceling meetings and et cetera. as a consequence of this. So I think the people are starting to get it. Now, we're going to do a resolution for Small Business Saturday on tomorrow night at the council meeting. And in it, I'm going to insert a sentence or two saying I encourage people to buy locally, but let's redouble our efforts to figure out how to buy locally through takeout, through ordering and having it delivered, etc. We all can do our part, and every single entity that can somehow break that chain of transmission or at least slow it is going to contribute to lower infection rates.
Second and last question for me is just to reiterate, why is it so important, Mr. Mayor, just to like I said, be ahead of this, to obviously protect the staff here at City Hall and try and slow the spread of COVID? Why is it so important now more than ever to take this step and close City Hall?
This pandemic is taking off at a huge rate, even faster than what we saw when we took steps in March and April. If you're not ahead of things, then you're almost by definition behind things. And I would never want to be behind something where human lives are at risk. On average in this country, for every 1 or 50 people that contract this disease, 1 person dies. We've now are approaching 500 infections in Clinton County. That means we should expect statistically about 10 deaths. We aren't there yet. I'd like to make sure we don't get there, but this is serious. We're having rates of infection of somewhere between 50 and 100 per week. That could translate into 1 or 2 more deaths per week if this thing starts getting out of hand. Of course, you heard me say at the council meeting the other night that fatalities lag behind infections by about 3 weeks. So I want to make sure that by nipping this in the bud now, we can somehow take advantage of that 3 weeks and don't start getting back to the level of hospitalizations that overwhelm our system and ventilations that often end up, too often end up killing people.
While this isn't directed at holiday travelers and such, the CDC has recommended that people not travel during the holidays. The governors in the region, not just New York, but Vermont, are strongly recommending that people limit their household gatherings. What kind of message would you send out to residents, visitors, etc. for the holidays, not just Thanksgiving, but throughout the Christmas holiday season?
I fully expect at the rate of increases, if you look at the data, we're moving up that exponential curve very, very rapidly, locally at the state and across the country. So I could not imagine this reversing itself quickly. I could not imagine this reversing itself by January, even if we took a lot of steps now. So to me, it would be foolhardy to travel to infected areas in ways you can't isolate over the next 4 to 6 weeks. I understand that means Thanksgiving and it means Christmas, but it also means keeping grandma alive if we can possibly do that. And I'd rather keep grandma alive and not travel. I've got an 82-year-old mother I'd love to see as well. And we have some very difficult conversations on the phone because she feels she may never see me again. But if I visited her and inadvertently brought the disease to her and she died because of that, how could anyone ever forgive themselves? It's not worth it for a Thanksgiving or a Christmas in my mind to at all risk anybody's lives. If any city staff were to be foolhardy enough to travel at a discretionary way, in a way they could not be isolated and in a way that either infected somebody else or they brought infections home here, I would think that'd be completely unconscionable and obviously against the law in the New York State. But we're better than that, and we can't be doing that kind of thing.
Now, last question for me is the North Country Chamber of Commerce is doing this Mask Up North Country campaign. You might have seen it. You have obviously from the beginning been very vocal about how important it is that people wear their masks. Mr. Mayor, obviously, like I said, now we're in this, we're back kind of where we were around the March area. Why is it so important now than ever for people to keep wearing their masks and still be diligent?
Well, the data proved And when I put in the policy in April, and as you know, us and Laredo, Texas were the only two that had mask wearing orders that early in April. And we were both looking at the data. There were studies already coming out that showed that unless you have an N95 mask, you're not really protecting yourself that much. Although subsequent studies have shown that even wearing a cloth mask will protect you a little bit. But the idea of a mask is for me to protect myself from you, or protect you from me, pardon me. It's to protect the people around me, it's not to protect me. An N95 mask will do both. But some of the controversy, if you recall at first, was, well, that's just going to cause a shortage of N95 masks. No, I never advocated for wearing N95 masks. We need them for the healthcare providers that come across a lot of people. We need to wear cloth masks. So if I come here infected, which I'm not because I just got tested a few days ago, but if I came here infected not knowing it, knowing that your most virulent period is pretty early on in the infection they're now discovering, this mask protects you from something I may not know I have, and that's just as relevant in slowing down the infection. You might only be infected by one person, but I could infect 10 people if I come across 10 people in a day and don't wear a mask. So that's what masks are all about. The studies have been really obvious about that. Yes, it's true that a lot of political figures are very reluctant to take that step early on, but then again, I think a lot of political figures probably then regret not taking that step early on. I'm glad we did.
And you think that people, obviously, you still support people being diligent, wearing their masks, and you're encouraging them more than ever to do that?
Oh, of course. It's a gift from me to you, for me to wear a mask and not increase the risk of you getting infected.
So when you
But if I do warn people, if they do have some sort of condition, explore getting an N95 mask. And so you not only protect the people around you, but you're protected at the same time.
So when you see like the North Country Chamber, I guess, take this action and work with small businesses to try and, get people to wear their masks, because we don't want to see another shutdown like we saw earlier this year. I mean, that's gotta be something that the city's for, 100%, right?
Absolutely. You may recall me in the April and May timeframe of procuring 100 PPE kits, or was it 200 PPE kits, and delivering it to those groups that work closest with customers, were hair salon stylists and barbershops early on, because they didn't have the PPE equipment. The Chamber's been taking a leading role in getting awareness on this, and we need to make sure everybody's got the PPE equipment. It's not nearly as problematic as it was back in April and May, when it was hard for us to procure KN95 masks and face shields and et cetera, as you recall. So they're a lot more abundant now. And in that case, we wanted them to be wearing N95 or KN95 masks, because they need to be protected from their customers and protect the customers at the same time. The simple cloth mask, which is now ubiquitous, is very easy to come by and really helps bring down that RT. It's all about bringing down that RT to something less than 1. A KN95 mask will do that, but the RT reduction really depends on preventing me from infecting so many people in a given day. And cloth masks are very effective, the single most effective thing we can do.
And what's that RT again?
RT is the rate of transmission. A rate of transmission greater than 1 means that on average one infected person will infect one other infected person. And so that's kind of what, in epidemiology, that's kind of a steady state. This kind of just slowly permeates across the population. This disease has a natural RT of somewhere closer to 3 if unabated, which means one person will affect 3 people. Okay, the next day, those 3 people then affect 3 more, so now you have in 2 days 9 people affected, and then 27, and then 81. I mean, it's an exponential growth rate if you have that RT greater than 1. Keeping it close to 1 means it's not going to accelerate as quickly. Keeping it less than 1, it actually starts dying down. And this decreases our RT by a good half or so. So it brings an RT of 2 down to an RT of 1 and keeps the disease under control.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
You bet.
Thank you, Mayor.
Good luck with everything and stay safe yourself.
And you too, thank you.
Ham or turkey for Thanksgiving?
Well, my wife's